Welcome to our show. We are talking about Hercule today. How are you doing? Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
Oh, God. Okay, well, we're gonna get right into this.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the nonsense that is Hercule being the strongest man on Earth.
Yeah, that always bugged me. That always I feel like that was always a plot hole in Dragon Ball, just overall, because it's like he's not even the strongest man alive at that point. He's not even the strongest normal person, you know.
Well, that's what we were saying. Human. If you cut out everybody that isn't human, which they did do in those tournaments, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had humans, they had non-humans, they had mutants, they had Piccolo.
But did we have any non-Earthlings?
As far as Earthlings go, there weren't really any non-Earthlings at that point.
It's true. Piccolo is technically an Earthling.
Yeah, I mean, he was born on Earth. He thought he was a demon. He had no memories. It's the whole thing. But it's always been very strange to me, just because it doesn't make sense logically. Because there were people who gave Goku a run for his money as a kid, you know, which is saying something because he had superpowers. He just didn't know he had them. Now, granted, the original Dragon Ball series was a comedy. It was at its heart a comedy, so, you know, there's an argument that maybe it didn't take itself seriously back then, but it's like, those people still exist in universe. It's not like they ever stopped existing, you know?
Okay, and I just want to put it out there for those who may not know that Goku won the 23rd tournament and Hercule won the 24th, one right after the other, but there are 11 years in between. And I will say because I've always disliked that too. Hercule, even if you just said humans, straight up humans, there's still Krillin, there's still Yamcha, Tien, although someone might want to say he's got a third eye and that makes him an alien somehow or whatever. But anyway, yeah. Obviously they are stronger than him. But if you think about it, all they have to work with is who actually shows up. It's according to that tournament, not reality.
Yeah.
Because they could be dead. They don't know. You know, you can't just be like, well, maybe he would have beat so-and-so, but we'll never know because they'll never fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, the odd part of it is, it's like, Hercule is, he's not weak. He's not, like, so weak that anybody could beat him. Not like the farmer with the shotgun at the very start of Dragon Ball Z. You know, no, like, he's actually fairly tough. It's just that he was trained by a real martial artist, and it's just weird that, like, there are humans who are just overtly stronger than him who are still alive, so it's just weird that they didn't.
But like we said, we know that as the audience, but as far as the rest of the world is concerned, while having seen those people, they've actually never had them fight each other. They just didn't show up, and like I said, they might be dead, they might not really have been as strong as they remembered, and back then, Goku wasn't nearly as strong as he became. Not even close. He was just over Roshi level, I would say.
Well, and I was actually talking to you. I had this theory that because the series was written before the internet was really a thing, and so in the Dragon Ball world, the internet wasn't really a thing either, as the original series was written in the 80s, and I think Dragon Ball Z, some point from like the early 90s to like the mid to late 90s, you know. So there's an argument there that the internet wasn't really a thing back then.
Did they even have cell phones?
They did, but like you see characters use communicators that are very cell phone-esque.
True.
Not like real cell phones, but like, you know, sort of the retro future aesthetic of what a cell phone would be, which is like their whole thing in Dragon Ball, the whole retro futurism.
I mean, the tournament happened, so it's not like they didn't have the opportunity to go. So all they could base it off of was what happened. I mean, we obviously all know. And one could speculate that, yes, Goku would have beat Hercule, you know?
Yeah. But then it also runs into, like, I guess it's weird because the people of the Dragon Ball world don't really have a sense of normal anyway. Because, it's, you know, they have the animal people and they have the dinosaurs still walking around. They still have magic and this and that and the other. So I
aliens showing up.
Yeah, aliens showing up to destroy whole cities. So I guess maybe their whole sense of normal is skewed. And again, in a world with no internet or no approximation of the internet, you know, it kind of makes a bit more sense. It's like a world down a different timeline. But I have other problems with Dragon Ball.
Well, before we get to that, let me finish with, I was going to say, as far as the whole Hercule thing, we'll just wrap that up.
Yeah.
Also, part of the problem is they had more tournaments afterwards. So you think it would have been proven, that obviously he is not the strongest on Earth, let alone the strongest Earthling, let alone the strongest human. Even Vidal's stronger. I mean, Roshi is, I'm sure, stronger. Anyway. But it was rigged. Every tournament was either unfinished, blown up, rigged, and he was just like, I claim victory? Yay! You know what I mean? Yeah. And that was it. And it worked. So there's never been another true blue tournament to show that he is, in fact, not the strongest. Because I agree with you. Like, I hated that at the first. I'm like, in what world? But like I said, in reality, how would they know? Yeah, they can't base it on, hey, remember that one guy a while ago? Is he still around? You can't do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I guess that makes a sort of pseudo sense,
I don't even know that all of them have cell phones that they could be like, hey, you want to come to the world tournament again, buddy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think in the newer stuff, in like Super and all the attachments thereof, I think they do now, because it's like, again, the retrofuturism has to kind of catch up, but from the time period it was in originally, they had more like communicators rather than cell phones,
And it wasn't like when they signed in for the tournament, that they gave their phone numbers, addresses, and all that happy crap. It was just kind of, this is the name I'm fighting under.
Yeah, that's
not true. Even necessarily my real name.
Well, yeah, and Roshi literally participated under a fake name throughout one of the tournaments. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just odd to me, mainly because people know that these techniques exist, and that's the weirder part. People have seen Tien and Goku fight. Like, they've seen the weird stuff they're capable of,
No, I agree. Like, didn't they actually see Flight with Goku versus Piccolo? Nobody else?
Well, kind of. Goku couldn't really fly back then due to a confluence of reasons. Basically, Roshi never taught him because the power of flight was from a rival school that Roshi absolutely refused to learn himself or pass on to Goku. He always could. He has the potential to do it. He could always, and that's actually something that carries over across the entire series. You will never see Roshi fly of his own power because he can't. Because he not because he is incapable, because he's such a stubborn ass old man. He refuses to teach himself the power of flight simply on an old grudge, which I always loved about him as a character, by the way.
Seems like a waste to me, but I understand. It's a comedy, it's extreme, it's Roshi. I get it.
And it's a joke that carries literally across the entire series. Like, every time you see Roshi actually participate in the movies and the TV show, he never actually flies of his own power. The closest he can get is launching himself using Kamehameha.
See, I thought it was like, maybe you had to be a certain power level or something so that you could push that much chi out, to make yourself be able to fly. Then Videl flies too. She learns it from Gohan just by him kind of instructing her, hey, see that energy? Move it down there. Push it out there. Boom, you're flying. Yeah. So, yeah, I totally believe that he could learn if he wanted to. It makes sense that he just chooses not to. But they get put in a lot of precarious situations that it would be very helpful to be able to fly.
Oh, yeah. No, which makes it all the funnier that across all of the series, all of the years, he refuses adamantly, which I always found absolutely hilarious, because it's like, all the times he almost died, where he could have had the power to fly and just, chose deliberately not to. Because of this old grudge he had with this rival school's leader, from the leader of the Crane School, who was the same one who taught Tien and Chaozu how to fly. And it's very interesting.
So do you think it's something like The Matrix, where he could do it, but he never will allow himself, and therefore he never will? Like, it's kind of like the whole, I believe I can fly, and you can in The Matrix, but if you don't wholeheartedly believe that you can do it, if you have any doubt, you're gonna fall. And, like, oh god, gravity's real though, for real guys, and then fall. So with Roshi, his grudge, and you think that would hold him back? Like,
absolutely.
Literally?
Absolutely. Because apparently I don't remember the full story of it, but I remember that there's such bad blood between their two schools of martial arts that he, on principle, refuses. Like, he's absolutely got the skill to do it. He just won't, ever.
Did the rival school have a bigger panty collection?
Man, I feel like that'd be a point of respect for him, honestly. I feel like that would be like...
Whoa, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't be jelly.
No, I mean, the leader of the Crane School, as I remember, was kind of a jerk. But I don't know if that was more because he was a jerk or just because Roshi was competing against him and he fucking hates Roshi's guts, you know?
So he hates Roshi and thus Roshi hates him? Is that...
I think they just hate each other. I don't really remember the full story as to how they grew, how there was so much enmity between these two schools. Just that they absolutely, like, cannot stand each other. And more specifically, their schools of martial arts can't stand each other. But... yeah, and I think, if I remember correctly, I think Goku learned to fly from Tien. And I think he's learned at the start of Dragon Ball. No, I'm misremembering. Hang on. Okay, so I looked it up, and it looks like Goku either picked up the technique after watching Tien use it and just never used it until after Vegeta and Nappa showed up. However, prior to that, he was only ever seen getting around using the Flying Nimbus. And again, that's probably in large part because in deference to Roshi being so against it adamantly, and also because it's probably more convenient to travel Gohan around on the Flying Nimbus. Just because, you know, that way he had a little extra seat for his son, so he didn't have to worry so much about him falling or whatever.
So my question would then be, Krillin being a student of Master Roshi as well, at the same time as Goku, obviously. When did he learn to fly? Who did he learn from?
Not entirely sure, but I would figure Tien. After everything went down, they kind of wound up on very good terms with Tien and Chaozu. They kind of wound up forming a mutual respect and friendship for each other. And Roshi...
one bald man to another.
Yeah. And Roshi, I don't think ever really, I don't think he would go to the point of telling them what not to learn. It was more of a personal choice for him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would make them not learn it just because he adamantly refused. It was more of a personal grudge for him than someone he expected other people to adhere to, you know?
Well, and he appreciated their want to learn and better themselves and that kind of thing, so makes sense.
I did learn in some of the later material for Dragon Ball, apparently they made a specific rule banning flight using ki in some of the later martial arts tournaments, specifically because they felt it gave an unfair advantage to people trying not to get knocked out of the ring.
And Hercule couldn't do it.
That too. But, however, anybody who had wings or the ability to fly through some natural mechanism was still allowed to do that simply because it reflected a technique.
I was going to be like, they have wings. How dare you tell them they can't fly? That's some bull. Okay. But they could. Okay.
Yeah. But it sounds kind of BS, but it makes a little bit of sense just because it's one thing to stop yourself from falling due to physical effort. However, with the ki, it's like you can literally be falling out of the ring and just stop abruptly, you know? So you can just fall and just never hit the ground because you can hover. And I'm like, that makes sense. Apparently that's in like some of the newer Dragon Ball Super stuff that's come out recently. So I'm like, yeah, I could see that. That makes perfect sense. Because there's apparently one part where the androids are participating in the martial arts tournament, and they're not allowed to either, even though they don't use ki. And there's a whole other segment I could talk about that.
As far as the androids also participating or not?
Well, the androids in general, because the whole concept of they're androids who have a machine in them that generate more power than the equivalent of ki of a Super Saiyan, you know? And then there's Cell, who's even stronger than that. And that's always been weird to me, just that Dr. Gero could build a machine that could generate more power than a Super Saiyan and then put that in a person just casually, like you do. You know?
But is that allowed in the tournament?
They're allowed to use it, but they're not allowed to fly with it. They can't use it to make themselves fly. Which I feel is also it's kind of broaching into the weird territory, because they're not flying. Then again, one could argue their entire engine is kind of a weapon when you think about it. Like, the engine that gives them their powers is kind of a weapon. So, arguably, they shouldn't be allowed to participate at all.
How is it a weapon, though?
Well, in terms of the fact that it's not something their body can normally do. Because the rules of the tournament, like, from the very beginning, were that you're not allowed to use weapons unless it's something you generate yourself out of your body. Which I guess technically, as androids, they kind of do. But not in the literal sense, you know?
But why would you think that it's a weapon?
Well, because they were humans at one point, but something external was added to them that gives them the power to generate energy to that level. So I feel like it's almost unfair for them to participate in the tournament. You know?
Can you use energy beams and that kind of thing in the tournament?
Yeah, you can. You're allowed to use energy beams and anything you can produce out of your body, as long as it's not something you brought in from the outside. There's one guy in the I think the first tournament Goku participates in who's like this big kind of dragon dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like one of the animal people, but he's like a dragon dude, and he throws up this like sort of taffy material and uses it to bind Goku, and Goku tries to call him out on it, saying like, "Wait a minute, this is a weapon. Why am I not allowed to use a weapon?" He's like, it's not a weapon. It's something I produce from my body. And my body naturally produces this gunk anyway. I'm just weaponizing it against you specifically, and they let that slide. You know, Goku still won the fight, but it's like they kind of, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of an interesting anecdote there.
Yeah. Because then it's more a question of how long does it have to be part of your body to be considered part of your body, because with the androids that got added...
Yeah, and that's fair too, because we don't actually understand the mechanism. I mean, maybe it's keeping them alive. I mean, you can't ban someone with a pacemaker just because they have a pacemaker, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird to ban someone who has something in them that's keeping them alive, you know?
Well, it's hard to have so much variety and then on top of that have very specific rules.
Yeah.
There's too many caveats.
Yeah, too many variables.
In conclusion, Hercule doesn't make as little sense as one would think. Makes a little more sense than one thought. To be the world's strongest, quote, quote. Mm-hmm. And Roshi doesn't fly, not because he necessarily can't, but because he's a stubborn old man.
I think that pretty much sums up yeah. All right. But we want to thank you. This has been Perspeculative, and yeah.